All right, I think I have it now. All right, I was having a little trouble with my computer. All right, so good morning or good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. On behalf of the African Center for the Study of the United States, I want to thank you guys for joining our 2024 Black History Month lecture series. Access, the African Center for the Study of the United States, has been the premier institution studying the United States from an African perspective. Since our inception in 2018, we have worked to understand the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Africa and to make that relationship more equitable and beneficial. Our particular areas of study include the business relationship between the two entities. To this aim, we launched the U.S. Business in Africa Awards and Conference in 2021. In addition, with our partners from Sister Cities International, we have been examining the relationship between the U.S. and African cities, but we could not study the United States without engaging African Americans, whom we see as a natural constituency. To this aim, we have partnered with organizations like the National Association of African American Studies, the National Association of Black Journalists, and leading Black institutions like Howard University and Morgan State. To learn more about the work that we're doing, visit our website at africausforum.africa. That's Africa, I'm sorry, that's Africa-US-forum.africa. If you would like to support the work that we're doing, I have left a link in both the Zoom and in the YouTube chat. Now to our speaker and this great Black history presentation that we have for you guys today. Dr. Giani Clarkson is a proud graduate of Dillard University, and he earned his doctorate from Concordia University. He is a historian, a public intellectual, and a lecturer with a passion for education. He has served as a professor at Coppin State as well as the University of Maryland, and we are pleased to have him with us today. Dr. Clarkson, welcome.
Hey, good evening, brother, man. Definitely appreciate you and appreciate everyone that's in the listening audience to take the time to just learn something that's unique during this very pivotal month inside of history. I always say this all the time that although it's reduced to February, that Black history is American history. And brother, I can't, tell you how much I'm just proud of the amazing ability for you to be able to create this opportunity for those to learn more about what's going on. So just thank you so much for that.
No, absolutely. Thank you, brother, for being here, and we greatly appreciate it. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention that you and I went to the illustrious Dillard University together.
Hey,
and
I was gonna, stun on him and wear a whole Dillard University sweater, but I was like, no bias. 1869 can't be fine. Anyway, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So I'm going to make you host, and I'll allow you to take over.
Awesome. And let's see if I got these hosting abilities. Oh no, not yet. All right, let's go. Yep, there it is. And I am right there. All right. We go ahead and share that out, and I'm good to go. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. And am I good on that end? Screen shared good?
Absolutely.
All right. So let me tell you a little secret about me. I love baseball. Baseball has always been one of my favorite sports. Of course, I'm basketball, I'm football all day. Grew up playing it and loved it, but there's always a majestic feeling that I got when going to a baseball diamond. I'm tied to baseball as a kid. I played baseball in elementary and middle school. And, I loved how much I loved playing softball during the summer and everything else. Baseball has a very unique relationship with America. It's known as America's pastime. And as it's America's pastime, African Americans always try to find a way to insert the mainstream by this sport that America loves so much. Well, many African Americans wondered, well, why can't we be a part of this very unique experience? So what I decided to do was I want to explore a question during Black History Month about who is the real Slim Shady, about finding out the first. And what I mean by that is that we are connected into this belief that Jackie Robinson was the first African American baseball player. However, I'm going to push back on that. And I'm going to say that the only reason why we call him the first is maybe he's the person that has the least amount of controversy around him. Walk with me as we do Who's the Real Slim Shady? Finding our first, William, Fleetwood, or possibly Jackie. So we're going to present to you, or I'm going to present to you a diamond mystery. And we're going to look inside this diamond mystery to find out who is the first amongst these three gentlemen. America's pastime was definitely passing by the African-American experience. We think about everything that's happening in the 1920s. African-Americans represented 0.5% of educated Americans inside the United States. That was with any high school or extended college degree. We also know that the African-American experience was surrounded with so much poverty and segregation. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see a gentleman that's drinking out of a colored water fountain. In the center, you see, of course, people that are part of the Great Migration, which led many African-Americans out of the segregated South to a North that they thought life would be better, but still ran into various challenges. And on the right-hand side, you see, well, of course, a group of African-Americans that are building a free school. All these things that African-Americans had to build by hand, while other white Americans were enjoying a time that was very relaxing, were enjoying a time where there was gains in wealth. African-Americans are enjoying those things, but it's coming with a bit of a struggle. And that struggle is, why are we having to fight and build for so many various things? W. Du Bois once said in The Souls of Black Folks that African-Americans live in two versions of America. The version where they know that they are American, but the second version where they are consistently reminded that every day that they're Black and that they're not allowed various civil liberties or different opportunities that other people may have. This is the building blocks of what it looks like trying to build those civil liberties and to build out those educational opportunities that other white Americans have. So let's start with our first mystery question. You ready? And once again, you all are smarter than me. Look at this picture. Can you find the Black professional baseball player in this picture? Now, look closely. I promise it's not who you think it is. Maybe the person's maybe over here. Or maybe it's this guy over here. What about this guy that's dressed right there? You think it's him? All right, well, how about this? Like I do with my students that I have the privilege of teaching every day, what if I just gave you 4 choices? And here are your 4 choices. There's guy number A, or letter A. It's letter B. There's C, and there's D. You can put inside the chat or, of course, inside of YouTube and tell me, who do you think is the professional Black baseball player? Well, you know, this is a little difficult for some people. So how about this? What if I just broke it down to 2 choices? B or D? The guy with the mustache or the guy that's not? Well, if you said it was the guy with B, oh, I got something in the chat and I just got to read it. Let's see. I'm going to slide this over because I love when you have little interactive things. All right. All right. Okay. So my brother says it's B. And though he has an amazing Dillard education, one of the smartest people I know, unfortunately, he's wrong. The answer, well, it's D. Welcome to the peculiar world of William Edward White. Now, William Edward White played a professional baseball game as a Black man. Here's the problem. He did it a good majority of his life passing as a white man in 1879. Now, for those who are not familiar with the term passing, passing means that if you were a lighter complexion African-American that looked like you were possibly white, you were allowed access into various economic statures, education, all these things, right? And you were also allowed to be able to play with a bunch of white men, even though people knew, or you knew personally, that you were Black. William Edward White, he played on the Providence State traveling team in a game against Cleveland, which basically makes him the first Black professional baseball player. But do you count this, although he was passing as a white man? He played first base. He went on to hit 1 for 4, driving a run. He stole 2 bases, frustrating a catcher, and he's also known as the first former slave to play professional baseball. Now, this is 68 years before Jackie Robinson. Well, why don't we credit William Edward White as being the first Black professional baseball player? Does it have something to do with the fact that he was passing as a white man? If you don't believe me, because I love historical documents, this is actually a scorecard from the game. You can see where White's name is listed as the batter. Now, if you want to back check me on research, he may be listed as Bill White, but of course we know that William and Bill, of course, a nickname for Bill is, or nickname for William is Bill. We see his stat line here where he went one hit at 4 at bats. And we see that his name is listed all inside the scorecard that's inside of like an old version or original version of the New York Times. So he's listed there and he's here. And even has the date of the game, which is June 21st. Very peculiar. His life is totally clouded in mystery. Like, White was listed as a white man in the Federal Census Bureau in the 1880s, the 1900s, and the 1910s. So he passed as a white man for 30 years of his life. He even married a white woman and never returned back to his state of origin, which was Georgia. None of his children, his 3 daughters, knew that he was white. I mean, that he was black. None of his 3 daughters knew that he was a black man, which is insane. In fact, in a post interview, one of his daughters said that if my grandmother would have known that my mom had married a black man, that would have been the complete end of her. He spent his entire life passing as a white man. If you don't believe me, I love historical documentation. This is actually his death certificate, where he's listed as William White, and you can see right here of color of race, white, male, and of course where it's been signed as a confirmed death on April 5th. I've already mentioned Louise DeAngelis, who of course is one of his daughters, and she said once again that she never knew that her father played baseball professionally or the fact that he was a black man. Never knew anything about it. In fact, only knew him as a master carpenter, knew nothing about the fact that he was a black man. Do we remove him from the conversation of him being the first because he spent his life passing? Now, as a survival technique, that's what many African Americans did. They passed. And for the ability to gain access to various, like I said, economic statuses, educational statuses, yeah, people passed all the time. But did his passing disqualify him in the conversation of being the first? You decide. Can I bring you Exhibit 2? Sure, I'll bring you Exhibit 2. All right. So William Edward White, many African-American historians do not believe he should be counted as the first because, well, he passed. And did his desire to play come with him trading in his blackness? Did the love of him wanting to play professional baseball come with an ironic trade that he's removed from African-American history? How do we really define our heroes? Is William Edward White a hero? What will be your opinion of William Edward White? Once again, by him passing, do we pass him by and don't count him as the first? All right, well, here's exhibit number 2. I'll make this one a little bit easier. Can you find the first professional black baseball player in this picture? I'll give you a hint. Pick the black guy. Is it guy right here, number 6? Or is it guy right here, number 10? Is it guy 6? Or is it guy 10? Now you're probably looking at them and says, who looks like they could be the first of anything? Who has the courage? Who has the bravery? Well, I'll tell you, and this is someone that I absolutely adore in history. This is Moses Fleetwood Walker. And if you're wondering who he was in the picture, yep, it's guy number 6 right here. Moses Fleetwood Walker was known as the barehanded Negro catcher. I want you to imagine someone going on a baseball mound, if you will, stepping all the way back and throwing a baseball as hard as they can at roughwards of average of 70 miles an hour. And you have to catch that baseball barehanded. That was Moses Fleetwood Walker's life. many catchers that played baseball caught barehanded. And in 1884, with the Toledo Blue Stockings, he became the first, well, another of the first African American to play professional baseball. However, his career was ended by 75 white men. If you don't believe me, trust me, it'll all make sense in a second. So 63 years before Jackie Robinson, Fleet Walker suited up for 42 games with the Toledo Blue Stockings, right? And this is the first professional club that's associated with, that's the first American baseball club that later on becomes what we now know as the American League, which technically makes him the first Black man to play in major leagues, even though it was not named the American League at this time. So do you call him the first? Well, Moses Fleetwood Walker has a little bit of an issue with him too. At this time, no Negro baseball leagues were established, so he played with the majority of white players. And because he was a Black baseball player, they did not keep stats on Moses Fleetwood Walker. So we don't know in these 42 games how many hits he had, how many bases he stole, how many runners he's thrown out. All this is hearsay information, unfortunately, because of how Moses Fleetwood Walker's life has been constructed to us by a lack of respect for how great of a catcher he was. So why is he overlooked? I've said before that he's ahead of his time. There's a lack of record keeping, and he did not have access to the Negro Leagues. One of the most popular pitchers at this time that he actually caught for was a man by the name of Cape Colin. And he said in an interview that Moses Fleetwood Walker was easily the most just greatest catcher he ever had the privilege of playing with. But he never told him what pitch he was throwing. So for people that know baseball, right, the catcher, of course, does hand signals. Usually it's 1 for a fastball, 2 for a slider, 3 for a curve, or whatever those finger signs may be. The catcher has to communicate with the pitcher. But the pitcher that he was working with was so racist that he said that I did not want to take directions from a Black man. I repeat, the pitcher he was working with was so racist, he said that I'm not taking any type of directions from a Black man. So when he was throwing pitches at him, he had to guess and figure out where this baseball is coming. And remember, if the ball gets past him, that leads to someone stealing a base. Yeah, can't tell me racism isn't real. So because of him being ahead of his time, because of lack of record keeping, and of course not having access to the Negro League, we kind of miss him as well too. Remember I mentioned the 75 white men that of course showed up? Well, this is another reason why his career ended. Moses Fleetwood Walker was such a dominant catcher at this time that no one was going to steal on him. He had a cannon of an arm and was throwing out runners left and right. In a playoff game, they found out that, of course, Moses Fleetwood Walker was going to be the catcher. And when they found out that he was going to be the catcher, 75 white men showed up and said, if he enters the stadium, we're going to kill him. Moses Fleetwood Walker stood his ground and said, you know what? I have a right to play this game. And he was getting ready to fight all of these men. He was carted off by the police, declared crazy, declared insane, and he's basically swept underneath the rug because he stood up for himself. He stood like a man, and because of that, Moses disappears. So do we count him as the first African-American to play professional baseball? Because, I mean, he does declare himself as a Black man, but this is his violent tendencies and his inability to turn the other cheek is the reason why we dismiss him. Well, now we have Jack Robinson. And forgive me, it's very hard for me to call Jack Robinson Jackie. I often felt that the reason why he's referred to as Jackie is to make this man seem more like a boy. Come with me for a second, right? One of the worst things that you can call an African-American man is the word boy, or to do something that insults their intelligence and manhood. The word boy automatically connects them to lack of intelligence, lack of ability, just lack of everything. And I often felt that kids were named Jackie. This man was a grown man. His name was Jack. And he should be respected as so. Jackie Robinson kind of works as a bit of a Manchurian candidate. He has all the elements you would want inside of a person that could break the color line. He is a UCLA graduate. He is a basketball star. He's a track star. He went to the Army. And of course, being a standout football player, the Army wanted him to play football, but he wanted to concentrate more on baseball. And he said no. That was one of Jackie Robinson's first party fouls. Jackie Robinson stood up against, of course, many of the racist tendencies that were happening in the Army at this time. And believe it or not, he was almost court-martialed on several different occasions. However, after proving that many of the things that were happening against him were unfair, and a lot of the pushback or anger that he was experiencing was really solely due to the fact that, hey, he did not want to play football at Army. He was able to beat a lot of those charges. He left the service, honorably discharged, and he really left as a decorated soldier. Jackie Robinson's way more complex than we often don't give him credit for. He's just not this guy that shows up in the minor leagues and, you know, he pops up on the world stage one day. He is a made man. UCLA is not an easy school to get into at this time. He's intelligent. He's well thought out. He's well spoken, well written, and he happens to be a really great athlete. And when I teach kids about Jackie Robinson, I tell them, I was like, Jackie Robinson, man, is first. Jackie Robinson, baseball player, is second. He's a man, and he's able to really battle a lot of things inside of an unjust culture. In 1947, of course, he breaks the color line with the Brooklyn Dodgers, thanks to the bravery of an owner by the name of Branch Rickey, who, of course, signs Jackie Robinson be here. So about Jackie, or Jack, about Jack, he has an amazing ability to turn the other cheek. There are many places where he was threatened, his wife was threatened. There are places where his car was brutalized, his equipment was stolen. There are times where, of course, he writes that his uniform was stolen and found covered in human waste. Jack Robinson has a difficult life, but his ability to turn the other cheek, it's not something a lot of people can do. What I've done here is I have pictures of him and Pee Wee Reese. In fact, on the right here, and as you can see my blue dot that's there, this is a famous statue of the two of them in this picture. And this picture has been converted to tons of statues of showing how black and white players can get along. Pee Wee Reese and Jack Robinson were extremely close. They're amazingly close. And I think that their closeness is connected to the fact that Pee Wee Reese had a humanity to him that realized that he is experiencing something that I will never experience. There's a famed moment inside of baseball where Jack Robinson's having a bit of a tough go at it, and Pee Wee Reese, who's a beloved player, puts his arm around him. The next day, Pee Wee Reese, he puts his arm around him in front of the public. And some people cheer and a lot of people boo. The next day, Pee Wee Reese receives tons of hate mail. And Pee Wee Reese says to Jack Robinson, if this is what you have to experience every day, then my heart truly goes out to you. That's how difficult it was to be Jack Robinson. Turn the other cheek. You have a man that also is a rookie of the year, and he only receives one endorsement for a coffee company throughout his entire baseball career. Absolutely insane that's what happens. Is Jack Robinson's ability to turn the other cheek, his ability to take the scrutiny, his ability to take the threats, is that why we label him the first? I mean, don't get me wrong. Jack Robinson is an amazing baseball player. But is he better than Cool Papa Bell? Is he better than Satchel Paige? Remember, there's an American experience that's getting ready to happen when Jack Robinson crossed the color line. And can we find someone that's brave enough to deal with the scrutiny that's going to come with this? And Jack Robinson was able to deal with that scrutiny. So now you're left with this question. Who's the first? Is it a black man that passed as white because of how desperately he loved baseball and wanted to play? Is it a black man who could not turn the other cheek and dealt with the fact of trying to master a position with a partner that said that he didn't want to even take a direction from a black man? Or is it a black man that was willing to turn the other cheek, but was not necessarily the best player of his era? However you decide to list these three gentlemen, realize that they're all trying to find a pathway in American pastime. And I think that it's past time that we give them all their credit. You might not like everything that this gentleman to the left has done, but he's passing because of an unjust America at this time. And he's trying to navigate the best that he can. Remember, black men and black women that were passing as white would do anything to keep it a secret. And he kept that secret to his grave. It's even been said that, and one writer, one really great baseball historian said that when he took the field that day as a professional baseball player, the only person who knew that a black man was there was him. Or is it Moses for the fact of, man, could you have dealt with the fact of 75 people standing in front of you threatening violence, all because you want to play a game that you love? Or is it a man that gave his life for his country and you realize, man, even with me giving my life for this country, it's still not good enough. I'm still going to be yelled at. The worst of things will still happen to me. A little dinner time conversation during this Black History Month. I thank you so much for your time, and I'm humbled by your listening ears.
Thank you, Dr. Clarkson. That was an absolutely wonderful presentation. And yeah, man, that was riveting. The first, I have a few questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get it.
So the first baseball player, what was his name again? I didn't.
So you got William Edward White.
Well, there we go. The guy who was passing, William Edward White. So as I was listening to that, it brought to my mind the idea of this racial construct or this social construct of race, right? So I just want to pose this question, and it's not really about sports, but but it ties in. Is race about our genes, or is it about what we experience? Did white experience the world as a black man, and conversely, did the world experience white as a black man? Just a question.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, I think he did everything in his power to experience the world as a white man, because he looked at what the world would be as a black man, was like, nah, you know, he circumvented the African American experience. And, you know, me and you can't get away with that. You know what I'm saying? We can't get away with that. But you got a guy who's like, I think there's something here that I don't want to be a part of that. And you have to think about how traumatic, and I literally wrote this in one of my notes, how traumatic is something that you see where you trade in your culture. Because, you know, I'm not even saying he traded in for a better life. He traded in to avoid trauma, you know, and he traded in because he knew how much he loved something. That I love this thing so much that I know that if I can't experience it if I say that I'm black. So I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that people don't know. It's insane.
So Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. I wanted to ask about the Jack versus Jackie, because that was my first time ever hearing
Yeah,
like the use of Jackie as a as a means of bullying, if
yeah,
for lack of a better term,
yeah,
Jackie Robinson or Jack Robinson. So
right.
can you touch on it a little more for me?
So, when I was at Dillard, I had the privilege of doing so for those that don't know background, I'm at Dillard University. I was a theater major in theater, arts, and speech communications, and loved my time as a Dillard theater major. Sophomore year, we did a play called The Last Season, and it was a play about the last year of the Negro Baseball League and how all these teams disbanded because everybody wanted to cross the color line like Jack Robinson. And it was when doing research in the last season, one of the biggest points of controversy was people kept on saying, "Who's Jackie Robinson? We don't know a Jackie Robinson. We know Jack. Who's Jackie Robinson?" And they went,
Mm,
"Oh man, they got you. They got you. They
wow.
made you switch it. Oh, bro." And it was for many African American players that played with Jack, they were like, "Oh man, like, you know, we don't know how we feel about that." And it
Yeah.
it it caused some feelings about it. And so that's why that has always been a point of contention of, and of course talking to my father, who's an amazing historian, and other historians as well, too. He said, "Well, why would you call that man that? You're doing it to make him a notch down.
Mhm.
Oh, that Jackie sure can play. That boy is really good." And
Mm,
living in the South, growing up in the South, we know that B word, BOY, we don't really
mm,
play that word. When it doesn't, like, you could be my boy, right? Me and you, somebody that don't look like that calls one of us that, we're gonna move some furniture. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? These
Boy,
degrees will disappear.
boy, it's a white racist word, mama.
It was
In the
a
words of Michael
boy.
F.
We gonna move some furniture, man. I'm telling you, this tie gonna disappear, man. Detroit will come to you. So
Oh,
yeah, that's where I come from.
absolutely. You mentioned the last league and the disbanding of the Negro leagues.
Yeah,
Often we recently Deion Sanders was in the news for leaving Jackson State and
right,
going to Colorado. But prior to that, he had a campaign that said we want to bring home our athletes. These great black
right,
athletes are always going to these primarily white institutions. We want to bring them home to these HBCUs. What, in
right.
your opinion, what impact has integration had on African American sports from baseball, basketball to football? Has it been better because we now have more black millionaires, or has it been detrimental because we have lost our control of our own institutions?
It's a little column A and a little column B, and I'm gonna say it like this. There's two jokes I can tell. I'll be really profound and I'll tell a joke. America wants our rhythm, but not our blues.
Mm,
And everybody wants to be black until the police show up.
yeah, yeah,
And I think what it boils down to is this, is that column A, column B. I love the abilities or love the things that integration has been able to introduce to the African American experience. Sometimes I wonder, did we trade that in some entities for the pride that we used to have in our communities and schools?
mm,
And especially how we treated one another.
yeah,
When I talk to people that are older, they say that, integration was cool, but I really liked our corner store because the corner store and I had an agreement about if I was a little short. Um, I like integration, but I loved when we had our own because there's a little bit of understanding with the police officers that walked our blocks, right?
right, right.
And I think that we sometimes miss that. We
Mm,
miss those feelings of what home cooked empathy feels like. Not
mhm,
not not feeling sorry, but homegrown empathy. You know,
yeah,
the privilege of us going to an HBCU is that we got some homegrown empathy sometimes. And sometimes
absolutely,
we needed that empathy, right? We need a
absolutely.
moment where it was like, baby, it's gonna be okay. or that manhood talk like, hey, you tighten up. I don't think that empathy sometimes came along with integration.
Mm. Now, here's an important question. So recently, the Jack Robinson statue in Ohio
Mm-hmm.
was stolen and defaced. I essentially said it was a lynching, right? They
Yeah,
chopped off his head and set the statue on fire. And this is in the backdrop of the rise of Trumpism. This is in the backdrop of
right,
Gaza, Palestine, post Black Lives Matter, or still in the era of Black Lives
right.
Matter, but it's not as powerful. So, two questions. Just your thoughts on the defacing of Jackie Robinson's statue. And number two, what role has sports, baseball, football, basketball played as a tool and of protest against and a pushback against these systems of racism, or has it not played a role?
These are really amazing questions. So I'll go with the first one. The first one bothered me so much because I remember when we were talking back and forth, and I told you what my title was going to be of this lecture, and you were like, Gianni, I think you throwing me a softball, man. I know you can come a little tougher than that. And I think when you saw how I bridged this out, you went, oh, okay, brother, I see what you're doing here. What
Yeah.
hurt me was that, this happened like 5-6 days before we're celebrating this man's birthday. He's born on January 31st. This happened right, January 26th or so. And what it says out loud is, I still don't respect you.
Yeah.
That's what it says. I still don't respect you. I don't respect your life. I don't respect your legacy. I don't respect your contributions. And since I can't get to you on this side of heaven, let me destroy a symbolism of your life and legacy. And that's what it realized. And then the fact that it's drug and burned somewhere. I mean, of all the statues, Jackie Robinson, like, don't. Harper Lee has a book called To Kill a Mockingbird, right? And I always love the title of that book because a mockingbird has no natural enemies. A mockingbird just wants to live. So you killing a mockingbird, there's no reward in that. Jackie Robinson really did not live a life that was so verbally controversial. Yes, he was a civil rights leader, but I mean, of all people, man, Jackie Robinson, like, come on. That's kind of how I felt about that when it happened. When we look at sports, my prayer is that athletes get a lot wiser about understanding them as the product and them coming more personal CEOs of their life. Every Sunday and Saturday, we cheer for our favorite players and favorite teams. And I'm hoping that these brothers and sisters that are sacrificing their body for an entertainment value, because it is entertainment, let's just call it what it is, are able to understand how are they able to use that money to empower communities. Every year, they come, and I'm be very emphasis on they come to the ghetto and clip our roses and leave the ghetto and take our roses.
Wow.
I just hope the roses plant other roses and break the concrete.
Absolutely. So I think I want to pose this question back to you. So who was the first black baseball player? Was it White, Fleetwood, or Robinson?
Because of my spirit, bro, it's hard for me to call it at William Edward White, because White never wanted to be the first black player. Because because I would have loved at the end of the game, he would have, of course, because he played well in this game in 1879. I would have loved it at the end of the game. He would have said, "Hey man, I'm so proud of this big win we had, fellas, but surprise everybody, I'm black." Like I would have loved he would have won, right? I mean, we would have sung songs about him forever, right? I would have loved that. So I can't call William Edward White. I love Jack Robinson, love him. But if I'm really going to be on a historian lean, my move is going to be to Moses. And I know that Moses doesn't have the historical documentation But of all things that historically written about on Moses, Moses was straight up about to square up, and I'm sorry, let me use educational terms. Moses going to fight
Yeah.
75 white men that came there for him and threatened him. If you take this field, you know what time it is. And like someone who cared about him had to say, hey, don't do that. So I lean towards Moses, but I never am going to ignore the the fortitude that Jack Robinson had to go through. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I mean, and then of course, inside of any movement, and we do this historically, we ignore the sisters, we ignore our women. Like, that's a rough picture for his wife to see consistently. That's rough. I'm this man that I love is getting spit on. This man that I love is, holding back tears. Woo, yo, I got a lot of respect to these women, man.
Oh man, too often our sisters are just left out of the conversation and the roles that
Yeah,
they played
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah.
these movements, we know the names of Dr. King and all of
Mhm.
the great civil rights leaders, but there's so many sisters who were behind the scenes who were just doing the organizing from
Right.
to even everything. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
you're
I'm
absolutely
big.
right about
I'm big whenever someone says the NAACP was founded by W. Du Bois. I'm always quick to say, no, you're gonna put all respect on that man's name. It was founded by William Edward Bernhard Du Bois and Ida B.
that.
Wells.
Mm,
Okay, Ida B. Wells does not get the love she deserves. We gonna clean that up. William Edward Bernhard Du Bois and Ida B. Wells. And if you feel like switching the order, I don't have no problem with that as well too. Because when we look at the history of the NAACP, we notice that a lot of the corporation, organization, the fact that they have a parliamentary procedure is all due to Ida B. Wells.
absolutely. You touched on this just a little bit, and as we come to a close, um, you mentioned that I once heard Dr. Michael Eric Dyson mention that Jackie Robinson wasn't the best; he was the best suited for the position. Is
Correct.
how he said it.
Correct.
So, touch on that a little bit.
Oh, and it's funny because I got a lecture about this. It is called "What If I Told You the Civil Rights Movement Was a Marketing Scheme?"
Mm,
Just hear me out. Hear me out, right? Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige were all amazing baseball players. I'll give you the fact that you don't take Satchel Paige because he's past his prime, but you don't take Josh Gibson, you don't take Cool Papa Bell, but you go with Jackie Robinson. So what you're telling me is that you want a family man. You don't want a man that runs around and drinks, and you don't want a man that's known notoriously for, and I'm going to say this in a polite educational way, conquering white women.
mm,
So you pick the right one. You pick the
yeah,
right marketing brand. You know,
yeah.
that's the brand you bet on. If I have to introduce the Black experience to America to show this version of white America that Black men bleed and cry and can fight for our country, look what I brought you. I brought you a college educated military man with a family with his 2.5 kids. Don't you know someone in your community that's military, got 2.5 kids? See, look, only difference is in color. It's good.
Color skin, yeah, yeah.
It's
Oh man, that plays into that respectability politic that we often have. I don't remember the sister's name, but there was a sister prior to Rosa Parks who actually refused to give up her seat.
Claudette Colvin.
Say her name?
Claudette Colvin.
There you
COLV.
go.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she was a teenage mother or something to
So
that
this is
effect.
I can do this because that's one of my other favorite lectures. So you have Claudette
Yeah,
Colvin, who was the first to um, do this bus boycott in Montgomery. And
yeah.
she got the idea from the bus boycott that was happening in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Louisiana, right,
So
right.
when this happens, everyone just kind of excuses her as being this silly teenager. She's
Mhm.
friended by Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks friends her, and of course, as this happens and everything, the next thing that goes on is that, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do it, and because Rosa Parks has a certain complexion, because Rosa
Mm,
Parks has a certain educational background, See, this is how we'll introduce her. We'll introduce a Black woman to you. You know, Claudette Colvin was actually kicked out of school because she was a teenage mother. And that's what made her move north. Claudette Colvin is part of a major lawsuit that helps to sue the city of Montgomery, Alabama, in racist practices. And she doesn't get the credit that she deserves either. She went on to become a nurse and all these great things. But yeah, it's a packaging. You put Claudette Colvin next to Rosa Parks, there's a complexion concern, there's an education concern. You know, how is the civil rights movement marketed? We don't really want to market Moses because Moses said, I'm going to square up. Jackie said, I can find a cheek to turn. That's why 42 is there. Wow. And that's once again, that's not to discredit how great he is. He's amazing. But let's be real clear here. The civil rights movement is one part marketing strategy. Remember when you were a kid? Remember how they used to tell you about Rosa Parks? She was so old and she was just tired and she made a mistake. You remember that? Rosa Parks in her 30s. That ain't old. You know, come on, bro. Talk nice to me, man. Rosa Parks can't be old at 30, but we were told this. We're told this fairy tale that she's so tired from working all day. And I remember at one time someone was like, "Oh, she was a domestic," and I'm like, "Pause. She's not a domestic." Rosa Parks had one of the most brilliant legal minds ever. If people that are listening, the trial of Reese Taylor, just look at it. Who led that investigation? That's Rosa Parks that did that.
Wow. No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I do know that Rosa Parks had a love for Brother Malcolm.
And
that you know, after the boycott, she was in Detroit or maybe Chicago working on behalf of Brother Malcolm. So
when growing up, could go by her house that she lived in Detroit, and you know, next time you this side, stateside, I'm gonna take you to the O Street Museum, which is where she spent a lot of her house and a lot of her remaining years, and we can actually walk through her room at the O Street Museum. Yeah.
Man, Dr. Clarkson, you are just a wealth of information, brother. And I mean this sincerely. I need to sit down and just pick your brain about a few other things offline, man. But you know, you did have that Dillard education, so
I did have that Dillard education, man.
But I thank you so much for this presentation, man, and joining us. Man, it was an absolute pleasure. You can catch the replay of this on Axis Bits at YouTube. It'll be there. And thank you again, brother. Any closing words?
Hey, just understand that I'm gonna do a shameless plug, and then I'm gonna go ahead and land the plane. If you're always interested in learning more about the African American experience, especially during Black History Month, on my YouTube page, I have something that's called History in a Minute, where I do all the unsung heroes that get looked over, from Wendell Scott, the first African American, to, of course, race in NASCAR, to, of course, really the woman that actually designed the dime and had her design stolen. So all that to say is that these are some amazing stories to share with your youth. And I say this all the time, though it's only 28 days, Black history is 365 days a year. And it's important for us to tell those stories, those that are sung often, and those notes that are inside the soundtrack of Black history that don't get played often as well, too. I thank you so much.
That's a beautiful analogy, brother, man. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you again, Dr. Clarkson. And we will be back next week, same time, same place, with our next Black History Month lecture.